All episodes of Miss Marvel are now streaming on Disney Plus. So if you have not seen it yet, we're going to talk about it a bit. But before we get started, there are going to be some spoilers, some plot details in here. But like my Stranger Things review, I'm going to break it up into tiers. So we're going to do non-spoiler stuff first, and then we'll go into the spoiler stuff a little more down the line. Without further ado, let's get into it. Kamala Khan, played by Iman Vellani, is a teenager living in Jersey City. Life seems to be pretty normal, and she's a massive fan of the Avengers, very specifically Carol Danvers, aka Captain Marvel. And one day when she gets a bangle that seems to have some kind of hidden power within it, she herself gets some powers, and she becomes a bit of a superhero. But it seems like a lot of forces want this power, and there's an ancient history of sort attached to this bangle, and that might be causing some trouble, and she has to figure out what this whole thing is really means. I've run the numbers. I've looked at all the reviews and all that have come in recently on the people who've been talking about it, and I have come to one solid conclusion on Miss Marvel. I might be one of the last South Asian brown guy reviewers or anything like that to actually talk about this show in any capacity. Because I've seen reviews on episodic sense or the first 2 episodes when that embargo lifted, and I haven't said anything so far because I was waiting for the series to end so I could convey my thoughts entirely. But it's very interesting watching a show like this, and you're seeing it from a perspective that seems quite similar to things that you may have seen or heard of growing up. And so making this show happen, even though it's obviously not my life story, there are so many things in here that feel so akin to things that I may have seen before. I like the fact that Marvel makes this kind of push every now and then. And I think I like that especially because the world is huge. And sometimes when you're focusing on one specific part of things, you tend to lose sight of what else there is, which leads to a lot of people thinking that there's some kind of push happening in terms of trying to, shove an agenda or something like that. There's no agendas. People of all kinds exist in the world. All kinds of religions exist in the world. And to shed a light on those things is great. You're able to see different things brought to light. Miss Marvel is the front runner in all of this, in my opinion. With this, you're seeing something so interesting, and I think that's easily one of the biggest strengths of the entire show. You're seeing a side of the world that I'm glad people are seeing. And it also involves knowing history that maybe people didn't really know about. We'll talk more about that one bit later, but let's start off with some of the other simpler stuff as well. For example, Kamala Khan. I think Iman Vellani is not even a real human being. They literally just plucked her out of a Miss Marvel comic book because she actually is Kamala Khan in every sense of the word. I've seen interviews, I've seen all kinds of things with her. That's her. That's Kamala 101, and she is magnificent in this role. I mean, you couldn't have had a better casting. And that's what I mean. Like, you can't even be convinced that this was someone else. They must have literally plucked her out of a comic book. And every single mannerism and every single chuckle-worthy moment that you get from her, and all the teenage awkwardness that is also there along with her high school life, having crushes on different kinds of boys, all of that really well enunciated, and all of it is really well presented as well in this very quirky, fun manner. The direction and the writing, which is coming from Bisha Ali and Adil and Bilal, who have also worked on stuff like Bad Boys for Life, all the stuff that you're getting over here represents that character wonderfully, and the characters around her. Her family, for instance, is so well realized. They're a Pakistani family that has immigrated to America, and obviously many years ago, but there are generational stories that they're covering as a result of that, and all of that is also very well done. It also leads to a lot of different, very vivid and colorful imagery, along with some interesting music choices throughout. Lots of Urdu and Hindi music, lots of Bollywood references. There's an entire scene in episode 2 which is basically dedicated to her talking about Bazigar, the Shah Rukh Khan movie, with a guy named Kamran, who eventually becomes an important part of the story. And there are so many little things that they drop throughout. There's music they play from different Bollywood movies too. At one point you hear Ye Mera Dil from Dawn, the original one, not the Shah Rukh Khan one in 2006. You hear Dil Bole Harippa from the movie Dil Bole Harippa, which is kind of crazy. I'm just amazed that all of this is happening in the MCU. And I mean, I'm glad, because you can convey whatever complaints you want with the Marvel universe and how much is happening with it right now and the oversaturation of it, but there are these nuggets every now and then that really just shine through, and this really does convey that perfectly. Something about this show that I was really impressed by, however, was how it handled historical context, as the story is taking place between different time periods because of this power which is in the Bengal. It goes back to a time pre-independence in India, and then eventually leading to the partition when India and Pakistan became two separate entities, and then the migration happened between Hindus and Muslims. Now, a lot of people don't know about partition, or at least whatever they do know, it comes off in like books as people moved, and it seems to be very simple. I mean, for the longest time, even in my school, like it was like, move, that's it. But there are so many disturbing and horrifying stories around that move. Like, it wasn't just simple as you get on a train and go. People were getting killed left and right too, and it was constantly a lot of dispersing happening. It was very chaotic and traumatic for a lot of people. The stories of that have affected generations. I have stories like that in my own family, and when I sometimes think about it, like I think about a story in my family. I'm not sure how much I'm at liberty to share, but it involved a train. It involved people getting killed on trains and eventually making it out somehow. But when I hear that, it sounds scarier than any horror movie, book, show, anything that I've come across since. And that handling in the show is heartbreaking to watch. It comes in the form of Kamala's ancestors, and since her family is Pakistan, it's about them moving to Pakistan. But in my case, it was my family moved from what is present day Pakistan to India. So there's a whole context over there. But partition took a toll on everybody. It's not just one side that was affected. There was strife across the board. And I'm surprised that a lot of people who I was seeing watching the show are watching, like, they're watching some of the events play out and they're like, this is how we're learning about it. And I think that is the power of something like this. Like, again, you can have your complaints about the MCU, but sometimes it does these things which are just incredibly powerful. And I'm glad that it did that over here. But back to the show itself. The show, is it good? Yeah, of course it is. And there's a lot of stuff that I love in here. Let's just talk about some of the basic things too. Like I said, Iman Vellani is excellent, but I really liked everybody in the cast. I thought her mom was excellent. She's also a character who comes off as this very, like, overbearing mother at times, and if you've ever been in a South Asian family, you know what that feels like. And it comes to the parents as well. There's all sorts of stuff that goes on in their family that's very dramatic. The direction and writing, like I said, is very consistent throughout. I would say one thing that I thought the show could have been a little better at times was there are some supporting characters that I feel don't get as much as I would have liked them to. I would say maybe that's my only major issue with the entire series, that there were some times where I don't know if I could have, I could fully grasp the relationship between certain characters, and sometimes it was a little cut short. For instance, between Kamala and Nakia, her best friend, sometimes I feel like their stories were cut short a little bit, but it still managed to come through in the best ways possible given that the time that they had. I would hope that 6 episodes doesn't become the norm even more so going forward. I really hope that they expand on things. I hope they do a season 2, in fact, which would be really great to see. But as she's discovering her powers and as she's being able to find out what she can do, which goes from something a little more faulty, like generating these light beams through the bangle and within her, which is a change from the comic books, up till a point. We will talk more about that later. There was some controversy around this, but I think they made it work well in the context of the show that they're making and the story that they're telling. So I do have to give some props to that. And eventually, as it moves over to Karachi for a little bit and you're seeing the story play out over there as well, all of that is really well done. The visual flair of this is also great. It's so colorful. And sometimes, we get flack in the MCU for not having enough color, but this one is loaded with color. And they doubled down on it quite a bit in some sequences, which is really nice to see as well. Some stuff really pops out on screen. Also, really great is the music. I already mentioned that there are Bollywood music and things thrown in there. And yeah, that's great. The score, too, is also very good. I think a lot of the show it lands on its feet tremendously. I should mention there is another flaw that I do have. Okay, there is another big flaw, and that is the villains, the clandestines. Yeah, I don't really care for them too much. I mean, eventually you get to know what their goal is, but it's not like it's super great. Like, I don't really connect with the characters at any point, really. I thought they were kind of side villains that I didn't really remember much of after a while. In fact, I don't remember so much that I listed the high school friends thing as like sometimes getting cut short as the biggest flaw, but really it's the clandestines. Like, I forgot about that for a second. And I do want to say that, that could have been a little bit better. Yeah, the villain problem definitely exists over here because there's no real major threat after a while, and even the threat that is there with the clandestines is very quickly neutralized. So eventually it becomes a more personal story, which I kind of like. It's almost like the show goes for this angle of trying to get rid of those things as fast as they can so that you can really focus on Kamala. And I think that's a very good thing to do. And I think the show excels at those things perfectly. So despite those little things over here and whatever, it really does stick the landing despite all of those things and make a really good show out of that. Speaking of her powers, I guess we can talk about this a little bit. So towards the finale, she definitely manages to get embiggen powers. She's able to grow larger, and she's able to extend her hands too, which is pretty awesome, which is exactly what she can do in the comics. So that was pretty cool to see, and she's using the light stuff still at the same time. So that still factors into it. So it sort of becomes the best of both worlds. I think that was a really, really cool move. I loved all of the stuff when it came to the action, honestly. The stuff with the red daggers at one point in Karachi was cool, even though it's mostly limited, but you're seeing that play out. And then with Walid, played by Farhan Akhtar, I thought that was really cool too. Again, a thing you never expect to see, Farhan Akhtar in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Great times we live in. These are things that are absolutely crazy to think about, and they really, really pulled it off surprisingly well. Honestly, I love this show. I think it's a fantastic piece of just entertainment. I think it's wonderfully executed. Like I said, I have some gripes here and there, but none of them impact entirely what I think of the show, which is it's my favorite show of the Phase 4 stuff. I think arguably it might be my favorite thing in Phase 4 entirely. Maybe next to like Shang-Chi or Spider-Man No Way Home. This is the best thing that they've pulled off. And I can't wait to see where else this character goes. Love the post-credits moment with Brie Larson showing up, Carol Danvers in the room, but it seems to be this teleported sort of thing where Kamala is transported into one thing and then Carol emerges. There seems to be some connection going on over there that we don't really know much about yet, but that's going to be very interesting to see play out. There's also a hint that they dropped that there's some mutation within Kamala which exists, and they kind of play this X-Men theme along with it. So they seem to be really setting up that X-Men stuff, including with Multiverse of Madness. So this is shaping up to be pretty interesting. I mean, last week I was just talking about Thor Love and Thunder being really great, but also I was like, when are they going to start making some of these connections? They've started making some of these connections. This is it. We're starting to see the plan come into formation, and I can't wait to see what comes next. I'm gonna give Miss Marvel an A. As of right now, series it's just one series, so they haven't announced a season 2 yet, but I'm hoping that they do. And so for now, series review, but I'm hoping for more to come in the future. I can't wait to see Kamala and the Marvels, and I can't wait to see more of this universe come to life. This is very, very exciting. This is honestly peak when it comes to what the MCU can do. And I know there's been some differing opinions here and there, but it works as a high school drama, it works as a character piece, it works as a superhero fun, entertaining, show. What more could you ask for? Guys, thank you very much for watching. Look forward to more reviews very soon. What did you guys think of Miss Marvel? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Let me know. As always, if you like this, please do subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the movies.